All right, let's dive into one of the most important chapters in the entire biblical narrative, Genesis 12. And look, this isn't just another story. It's a massive, seismic shift in all of history. For 11 chapters, the camera lens is wide, it's universal. But right here, it zooms in, hard, on one man whose journey is about to define the destiny of the entire world.
Think about it. For the first 11 chapters of Genesis, we get this sweeping, epic history. We see creation itself, the fall, the Great Flood, the Tower of Babel. It's the story of all of us. And then, bam, chapter 12 hits like a bolt of lightning. The story pivots from this huge universal scale to something intensely personal. It zeroes in on a single family that God chooses to partner with to, well, save the world. This right here, this is the line that kicks everything off. It is the ultimate call to adventure. God speaks to this man, Abram, with a command that is just as terrifying as it is absolute. Leave it all behind. Your country, your culture, your family, everything that makes you, you. This single verse launches the entire story of the patriarchs and sets the stakes impossibly high right from the get-go.
So what we're going to do is walk through this chapter verse by verse, starting with what's called the pshat, the literal, straightforward meaning. Let's really treat this like a movie, a cinematic journey. Let's try to feel the dust and the sun as Abram takes these first, fateful steps into the complete unknown.
Now get this, this isn't some young man heading out to find his fortune. Abram is 75 years old when he gets this call. I mean, he is established. He has a whole lifetime behind him. To just uproot your entire existence at that age based on a voice, it requires a kind of faith that's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around.
And believe it or not, Abram goes. He gathers his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all their belongings, and they set out from Haran. You can almost picture it, can't you? The caravan inching across this ancient, vast landscape, the sun just beating down. Their journey takes them first to a place called Shechem, then to the hills near Bethel. As they keep heading south, you can just feel the landscape changing, the land growing harsher, until they reach the Negev desert. And just when they get to the so-called Promised Land, crisis hits, a famine.
At Shechem, something really profound happens. God appears to Abram and promises him, "To your offspring I will give this land." Now, what does Abram do? He doesn't build a house. He doesn't set up a fortress. He builds an altar. And then he does it again at Bethel. These aren't just piles of rocks. You got to see them as spiritual anchors. They're basically declarations of faith, him planting a flag in foreign, probably hostile territory. It's his way of saying, God is here. He's plugging into the divine.
So the Promised Land tests him right away. This famine grips the land of Canaan, and it forces Abram's caravan to keep on moving. But this time, they're headed towards the region's superpower, Egypt. And you can feel the tension just ratcheting up. Egypt is a place of immense power, foreign gods, and a king, the Pharaoh, who is considered a god himself. For a nomad like Abram, this is an incredibly dangerous and intimidating place to be looking for help. And this is where the story takes a really dark and complicated turn. Abram is afraid that the Egyptians will kill him to take his wife, Sarai, who is described as being incredibly beautiful. So he comes up with a plan. He tells her, "Just say you are my sister." And the plan, well, it works, but at a horrifying cost. Sarai is taken into the Pharaoh's palace, and in return, Abram is showered with livestock and wealth. He's safe, but his wife is now in the Pharaoh's harem.
Just when it seems like all is lost, God steps in. Severe plagues start hitting Pharaoh and his entire household. It doesn't take long for Pharaoh to connect the dots. He confronts Abram. You can just imagine the scene. "What have you done to me?" And he immediately returns Sarai. Then he exiles them from Egypt, but he lets them keep all the riches they've acquired. So they leave Egypt wealthier, for sure, but man, the moral questions are just hanging in the air. So that's the literal story. That's the movie version. But in ancient interpretation, the literal story is really just the beginning. Now, let's peel back a layer and move to the remez, which means the hint. This is where we start looking for hidden codes, for linguistic clues in the original Hebrew that point to a much, much deeper meaning.
Okay, check this out. The opening command, Lech Lecha, is almost always translated as go forth or go. But the Hebrew is so much more profound than that. It literally means go to you or go for yourself. The ancient commentators saw this as a massive hint. They said, this isn't just a physical journey across a map. This is a spiritual journey inward.
God is basically telling Abram, you have to leave behind everything you think you are on the outside to discover who you truly are on the inside.
And the promises that come next? They're also kind of coded. They operate on two different levels at the same time. You've got 4 promises aimed directly at Abram. You'll become a great nation, you'll be blessed, you'll have a great name, and you yourself will be a blessing. But then, whoa, the camera pulls back, the scope expands. 3 more promises connect Abram to the entire world. The fate of other nations will literally depend on how they treat him, and ultimately, through him, all families on earth will be blessed. This intensely personal journey has world-altering consequences.
Okay, now we get to the drash, the inquiry. This is my favorite part. This is where we stop just reading the story and we start to wrestle with it. We move past the what happened and we start to demand answers for the why. We're exploring the deep, messy, moral and emotional questions that are really at the heart of this whole story.
So let's put Abram's very first decision on trial. He hears a voice and he completely abandons his entire world. Now, was this the greatest act of faith in human history? Or was it just completely reckless? So, on one hand, you can defend Abram. You can say his obedience was perfect. It's the model of pure faith. He trusts God, no questions asked. But on the other hand, you have to challenge that, right? Is it really faith to abandon your elderly father, to ditch your entire support system, and to risk the lives of your wife and your nephew, all because you heard a voice? Or is that actually dangerously, profoundly irresponsible? The text just leaves that tension sitting there for us to grapple with.
And the questions, believe me, they get even harder when they get to Egypt. The moment with Sarai and Pharaoh, it's probably the single most challenging part of this entire chapter. So what was going on here? Did Abram make a tough but necessary call to protect the divine mission, or did he commit a massive moral failure?
And this is where a quote from our source material really grounds the whole debate perfectly. It says that the biblical writer insists that the central concern of life is morality, that the moral choices and actions of humans have consequences. This reminds us that this isn't just some ancient history book. It is a book about choices. It insists that what we do matters and that our actions have real, lasting impact.
Okay, so let's break down the arguments. The defense for Abram says he was playing the long game. His survival was everything. If he died, the promise of a great nation dies right there with him. It was a terrible choice, for sure, but maybe it was a pragmatic one to save the future. But the counter-argument is incredibly powerful. Where was that faith that led him out of Haran in the first place? It really seems like he fails to trust that God could protect both of them. He chose self-preservation at the direct cost of his wife's dignity and her safety. It's a really deep, uncomfortable clash between pragmatism and principle.
Now, let's go even deeper. We've seen the literal story, we've found the hints, we've wrestled with the moral questions. It is time to explore the sod, the secret, the mystical layer. In this level of reading, the story of Abram isn't just about a man's journey. It's a blueprint for cosmic repair. It's a manual for spiritual transformation.
To get this, we need to understand a key concept from Kabbalah, the Sephirot. The easiest way to think of them is like 10 divine dimensions or channels of energy. It's like the spiritual source code of the universe. The mystics teach that Abram's journey isn't just about walking from point A to point B. It's a mission to bring these divine energies down to Earth, to fix what got broken way back in the beginning of creation.
So when you reread the chapter with this source code in mind, everything changes. Suddenly, Abram leaving his home isn't just a physical move. It's a spiritual separation from the forces of negativity and ego. And building those altars, that becomes an activation of his core spiritual energy, which is chesed, or loving kindness. Then the journey down into Egypt, or Mitzrayim in Hebrew, which literally means narrow places. That's a necessary step of purification. You have to go into the dark, constricted places to refine your soul. And finally, coming up from Egypt with all that wealth isn't about getting rich. It's a mystical elevation. It symbolizes rescuing holy sparks of divinity that were trapped in the muck of the material world. The whole chapter becomes a map for the soul's journey back to God.
So we've walked through all 4 levels, the literal, the hinted, the moral, and the mystical. The final step is always to bring it all home. How does this ancient story help us improve our own character traits, our own inner dimensions, our midot, right here, right now? The ultimate lesson of Lech Lecha, go to yourself, is all about growth. It is a call to leave our personal comfort zones. So here is the challenge. I want you to identify one thing in your life. It could be a habit,
a routine, a mindset, something that represents your own personal Ur, that place where you're comfortable but you know you're stagnant. And this week, just take one small, concrete step to journey away from it. That's it. That is the essence of Abraham's entire path applied to our own lives.
Abram's journey and the destiny of the entire world that flowed from it all depended on that first step out of his comfort zone. So the question this chapter really leaves us with is a deeply personal one. What is the Ur you need to leave behind to begin your true journey? Thank you for joining us for this complete journey through the Pardes. We hope these ancient truths help you improve your own dimensions. If you enjoyed this full chapter deep dive, please like, subscribe, and share which part of the journey touched you most. We'll see you in the next chapter.